Well, just as we were coming into anchor, two things happened. First, we had this almighty knock, and then the calorifier has started leaking and it's pissing hot water. It's not good, is it? So we thought we'd go and anchor somewhere a little bit different. There is a little fishing village just on the southeast corner of Gaya. So should be good protection from these northerlies we've got coming through. So we thought we'd just go and have a little look around there. We've anchored on the other side of Gaya, which is the other half of the fishing village. But of course that's exposed to the prevailing winds at the moment. So yeah, what have you got to say for yourself then, you twat?
Well, I didn't catch any fish, which is very annoying. But I checked on my app and it said there was no fish activity today, so I don't feel quite so bad and useless now. Anyway, looking forward to getting the anchor down and making a nice omelette, cheese omelette with a lovely little tomato. Oh, it's going to be lovely. Hungry now. It was a nice little sail from Kota where we'd been anchored all the way to Gaya, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was quite pleasant, quite exciting. We were going to a new anchorage as well. Shame you didn't catch any fish.
I know.
Never mind. And then suddenly, two things happened. We heard this knock or this thudding noise.
Yeah.
We thought we'd hit something with the prop. And then 5 minutes later, I noticed that the calorifier, the water heater, had burst. And so we had to turn off the water supply to stop the leak.
No water. Absolutely no way of getting to water if you turn the calorifier off, is there? But we have got a hand pump, that's about the only thing.
This is one reason why it's so important to have manual overrides on anything, especially when it comes to fresh water.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential.
So that was the end of our little bit of anchoring and sailing, and we had to go back to the marina, didn't we?
Short-lived.
We needed the marina because just living on one small hand pump for all your water isn't the nicest thing. So
Not
at least,
ideal.
no. In the marina we could have showers and we could do all of that, and we had water on the dock, so it just made it a little bit more bearable. And you decided to buy a new one rather than brazing it, didn't you?
Yes, so the calorifier is as old as the boat, so it's over 30 years old. We have already brazed her twice, and brazing, by the way, is just it's soldering or welding of copper. We had brazed it previously a couple of times and they'd worked well, but I think my thinking was, well, we could try and braze it again and then it would be another couple of years before we have to braze it another time, and so on. So it made sense to buy a new one.
It did. It was just a matter of finding one that would fit in that very small area.
Yeah, so we settled on a calorifier made by SureJust. That's right, and their calorifier line is called SureCal. That's why I was a bit confused. So SureJust, we approached. They're a UK-based company. Now, they are not sponsoring this video, but they very kindly gave us a little discount on the delivery cost if we mention them, and we have no problem mentioning them because they were actually really good to deal with. Very, very helpful, and the delivery came within 5 working days, so that's not bad going.
So it was up to you then to install it.
Today we are going to be installing our calorifier. I say this word slowly because I've mentioned the calorifier before, and it's not a word that's used that often unless you're into boating. A lot of people thought I was saying cauliflower, and I'm not going to be installing a cauliflower today. We prefer to eat our cauliflowers. Anyway, it's basically a water heater. So it's a tank, an insulated copper tank, which turns your cold water into hot, and it does this in 2 ways. The first is that the engine cooling water runs in a loop, and that runs into the tank. So the hot water that comes out of the cooling system in your engine goes through into the bottom of the calorifier, around a coil, and it heats up the cold water that's inside and comes at the top as hot water. Obviously the engine cooling system in that loop then goes back to the engine. So that's the first way. And the second way is that it has an immersion heater element that drops into the top, so it can be mains powered as well. At the very bottom, this is the cold water feed. So that goes to the lowest point, and this supplies the pump pressure cold water into the boiler itself. The second and third fittings are the engine in and out, and then on the top, that's your hot water out. but SureJust have supplied a mixer. Now, we've not used one of these before. The idea is that this brings the hot water temperature down to a presetting, which you can adjust on the end here. And the highest temperature is 65 degrees centigrade. If you turn it right down, it's set to 45 degrees centigrade. We have gone for a smaller calorifier this time. Two reasons for that. The first is that we couldn't find a like-for-like replacement for our old calorifier, which is probably well over 30 years old. The second reason is that space was very, very tight under the bed, so we wanted something smaller because, let's face it, in the tropics at least, we don't need too much hot water. Occasionally we shower, occasionally, once a week if you're lucky. And of course we have to do our washing up as well. But we figured with the 1 kilowatt immersion heater, we could potentially run that off the lithium batteries. Now these things heat up the water very quickly, so it's literally just a few minutes. So in hot weather, we should be able to heat it up both from mains and of course through the engine. This is a 10 litre calorifier, and you can see that it's insulated in blue foam, or foam that's been spray painted blue, but underneath all that is the copper calorifier itself. We've also gone for an expansion tank as well. So this is a little 2 litre expansion tank. This just allows us to add an extra 2 litres to our capacity, but in such a way that it can be mounted in a modular way, so it doesn't have to take up the same area in which the calorifier is mounted. We can side mount this, and I have checked my measurements, and I think we've got just enough room to fit this in. I've also asked the guys to send us various fittings. Now we use the HEP 2.0 push fit fitting system. This is a plastic fitting system for plumbing with an inside diameter of 15 mil. It's pretty much a standard in a lot of plumbing these days, and it's very easy to deal with. We've already used it on the boat to plumb in our external shower system. Now, I did say that I was using HEP 2.0. Now, I've been using HEP 2.0 in the same way people say Hoover for vacuum cleaner, because this time we weren't using HEP 2.0, we were using another brand. Now, this was sent through by the suppliers. It's a brand that I've not used before, but I have to say, actually, it's really easy to use. The HEP 2.0 systems, in order to loosen them, you have to use a special key, whereas with these ones, you literally just push in the end of the fitting and the pipes pull out. At the foot of the bed is our old calorifier. Now fortunately this is almost a straight swap, apart from the mixer valve which goes at the top here. That's the hot water out. Now we've just been running the engine to come into the marina, so this is full of hot water. Those are the engine cooling in and out there, one on top of the other. So because it's full of hot water, we have what should be a pressure release valve here. Unfortunately the old one broke, and wherever I happened to be at the time couldn't find a pressure relief valve, so I had to put a straight cock on that, which is not ideal, which also could be why this burst. We have to open this up to let out all the water inside and crack off the engine cooling as well, taking these off. I think previously when we filmed us playing with the calorifier, a couple of you had pointed out that these connections were not ideal, and in fact I think the last time we had a problem with this, one of these had popped off. Now ideally this outlet here should be barbed, and it's not. It's a straight fitting rubber hose onto this copper pipe here. So fortunately with the new system that we've got, the attachment that we put onto the calorifier is a barb system, allowing us to simply pop this on with a Jubilee or a hose clip. So that's the excess water coming out of the cooling system, of course, which is why it's that horrible green colour. Fortunately when we do this we don't lose too much water out of the cooling system. It's literally just the excess that are running in the additional hoses from the engine. And finally we'll take off the hot water out, which should release the pressure. No, there we go. Now we've taken that out, it can drain. I think at this point it might be appropriate to put some detergent down there to flush through the bilges as well, keep them clean. The biggest modification that we have to make to this system is to convert these old hoses. Now, these are the hoses that were installed on the boat back in 1988 when she was built. And the new system, the HEP2O system, which uses the standard 15mm inside diameter hose, is very slightly different. Fortunately, HEP2O have these adapters which we can use. They are metal aluminium inserts like so. And the idea is that we chop this hose, we'll get rid of this, we'll chop it about there, and then we literally insert this metal insert inside that hose. That then makes it compliant to these fittings. Now these fittings are very easy, quite intuitive in fact. You simply push the pipe in, they lock into position and they are watertight. Very clever system, very easy to use. We're going to be attaching that cold water system from the old hose system converted to this. So this is the inlet for the cold water which goes in at the bottom, but you can see it has the built-in pressure release valve. Now this is slightly different to our old system which was independent. This one's built in. This is a pressure release valve that's set at 4 bar. So if the pressure increases beyond 4 bar, the idea is this automatically opens up, it pops open, and the excess pressure and water will drain out into the bilge via this pipe. Once that pressure has stabilised, that then closes automatically. So that is my cold water feed now, this one here, and we want to feed it into the bottom of the calorifier. So what this means is putting on another HEP2O fitting onto the barb that you see at the bottom there. And this is very straightforward. They literally slot in. Now you can see when you try to pull it off, that pulls out and is preventing it from coming off. To take it off, you hold this in place and literally pull it like so. So we push it on. Once it's on, we then screw this part closed just to secure it into place. Next, we want to put in a right angle here to make that connection there. Now this means cutting a piece of hose to fit into that end and the right angle end. Now bear in mind, of course, this hose goes into the fitting, so you need a minimum length. I've marked it on here. When you end up putting this elbow in, it will go right up to that black mark there. So we need at least that much for that end, the same again for that end, and we'll give another few mil just to give a little gap for play. In order to have a mixed hot water outlet with a variable temperature which goes on the top here, of course I need an extra cold water supply. So rather than put in the 90-degree elbow, I had to tee that off, so I've got an extra cold water supply which is going to come up to this mixer here. Now we've got these barbs here, so these are the barbs I was talking about that are recommended for putting these straight onto the hoses, and they can be clipped on with hose clips. So the installation's all going along swimmingly. The issue now is the expansion tank, which is, oh, this is killing my back. So this is the expansion tank, it's 2 litres. It's pressurised to 3 bar, and obviously we've got the water that comes out of the calorifier goes into this to fill this up and then back out to our hot water supply. Now there's loads of room here, I got my measurements right, plenty of room to mount this somewhere. The main thing is trying to mount it in such a way that A, the hoses have an easy run, but B, more importantly, I can get to the fuel cutoff and various other things that are down in the bilge there. So just give me a moment while I ponder this and work out where best to put the expansion tank. So that's it, job done. All in, don't know how many hours it took really, because I had to adapt some of those hoses. I think if I didn't have to do that, it would have been much quicker. But anyway, it's not too bad a job at all. Now, as you can see, I put the extra tank in sideways and I did this because I didn't want to put it on the other side where there was potentially more room, but that is where the mains power for the immersion heater is. So I didn't want any water in that area, so I've put it on the other side. It fitted okay. Hose is all cut to size, no problems with that whatsoever, and turn the water on, no leaks. Got running water again. I mean, that's the great thing about these push fit piping systems. Yeah, job done. I expended 2,000 calories on that job. Bloody back hurts though. God dear, all that bending over. Oh.